say errors, and some another aspects are involved with SPT values, how we take it to the site. We'll go through those aspects. However, if I say that I have some particular 50 by 50 square meter area in which my one of more important structure is coming, and I took almost let's say 17 boreholes into those areas, and if I plot every let's say SPT outcome onto the plot, it looks like this graph. Now, when we need to select for foundation design, we either need to identify let's say lower bound approach, which is I think a red line on your screen, or maybe I would say it would be upper bound SPT values, which will be on a blue line. Now, out of this, somebody will say that which one you select for your foundation design. It is difficult to say that we need to go with either a lower bound approach or maybe a upper bound approach, or I would implement the average value, because it is all depend upon your own experience into the site, the number of soil investigation program you have it, how many numbers you have it. Let's say in present time you have 17 boreholes, but if you have only 5 boreholes into it, your decision will differ, and probably you come out with some different number. And when you see individual borehole or individual profile of SPT value, probably it would look like what is in your right of the screen, which is layers also. Let's say there are some particular silty clay and gravel layers, then followed by silty sand, then silty clay, and then your SPT varies from almost 10 to, it rises up to let's say 80, 90. And then again it comes back to almost a 50, and then it goes up to 100. So probably if you look at to the individual log, your decision making is different. When you put them all together, your decision making is different. However, your decision is strengthened as and when your number of boreholes, your number of SPTs are increasing. They will give you more confident. They will give you a better trend and a better average of the ground profile. So the number of boreholes are always let's say fruitful. Without those things, the decision making would be of a half-hearted. Now, the major thing is over here. Let's say if I supposed to design my pile for this particular profile, probably the most important thing is that when to terminate my pile. And my pile should not, let's say, terminated into the clay layer. Probably for that, I need to identify the sand layer based on the geotechnical investigation program. And so for such kind of activities, usually based on the available borehole points, the let's say contour has to be developed so that you can understand the variability of your, let's say, important layer on which probably you either would like to fetch maximum sharp friction and end bearing from the sand layer, or maybe in case of a shallow foundation, probably you also would like to see how the shallow foundation variation occurs, so that your settlements or your settlement computations or maybe consolidation settlement calculations are I would say
there's a disturbance.
hello. Yeah. So that you can have a maximum outcome, and you will be able to understand that where you will be having a let's say the differential settlement profile. Probably when you put it into these areas, it seems to be more uniform. But when you see into the another areas, probably the area is not that much of uniform. You need to take care of all these things while you design the foundations, or when you develop the allowable bearing pressure recommendations from the soil investigation data. Now, all these major informations usually not incorporated or not available in your geotechnical investigation report. Those are factual data. The agency drills the soil, let's say the boreholes, whatever the outcome of all this investigation program, they put it into their report and give it to the geotechnical consultant or a structure consultant. And then all these informations which will be holistically or put it into the one paper and then try to visualize by geotechnical consultant to see whether these informations are enough to take a decision for foundation design, or they need, let's say, another sets of borehole investigations. I will just quickly go through this. This is SPT where we have a, let's say, the sitting drive, and then after sitting drive, whatever the blows for another 150 mm or 50 mm. So last 300 mm that we take for, let's say, for SPT annual use, and the equivalent ASTM can be referred as ASTM D1586 and or IS is 2131. Let's keep this. The advantages for SPT values are we have been widely using this from long time, and then our all entire soil investigation, let's say, agencies are much comfortable with SPT values. The substantial data are available for comparison for, let's say, if we compare older soil investigations to the new soil investigations, probably we will be having some of the data in nearby region in form of SPT values, so that we can compare the present outcome with the older one. A simple and inexpensive, that means it is a very cheap test compared to other sophisticated tests, and do not require very hi-fi machineries. So probably even with even today, there are some Calyx machines or older Calyx machines are available by which you will be able to conduct the SPT values, and provides the disturbed soil samples for visual classification. So the samples coming out from the split spoon sampler, probably you will be able to understand what kind of a sample, and even you can take it to few classification tests onto those samples to find out the type of soil which has been encountered, so that definitely you will be able to take the decision of SPT corrections at a later stage. However, there are plenty of disadvantages which usually ignored, but ignorance of those things are, let's say, in many of the projects have created a bigger mistakes. So they are highly variable. That means coefficient of variation is very high, from 15% to 40%, which means those will not be as repetitive. One day you take the SPT values, it is not likely that you will get the same test unless you have a same rig operator and the same agency conducting the test. Then you have a high chances of a lower coefficient of variation. Otherwise, your coefficient of variation for SPT values are even up to 40%, even more than that as well. Then SPT N value determined from the test is influenced by many factors, which you will see in the subsequent slides. Then discrete points, no continuous sampling is there. So at every 1.5 meter, probably you have this SPT blow counts. And then difficult to obtain meaningful data in case of gravels and steep clay. Probably people are using SPT values in steep clay, but sometimes it is misleading, because steep clay, if you have SPT values are more than 100, probably you will be completely wrong in characterizing the shear strength values. SPT hammer type and operational characteristic have a significant influence, and as you see, we usually use the do not type hammer, but in soil investigation data, probably agency never mentions that what kind of hammer they have used for conducting the SPT values. We have a do not type safety and automatic hammers. This do not type hammer is more popular in India. Most of the times you will find such kind of things. If we really try to understand where the actual errors are coming, then error is through, let's say, overburden pressure, which has been usually taken care by correction factors for overburden. Then variation in hammer drop heights. We need to have a drop height of 750, 760 mm. And sometimes if you are using do not type of hammers, and sometimes people are using with the manuals also, it's a manual blow applications, then probably you do not have a hammer drop heights uniform for each blow. and that has been usually by correction factors. This correction factor is let's say terminated by, I would say originally by energy correction factors. However, this correction factor is not in practice for India. We usually assume that whatever the SPT, whoever takes it, or whatever the type of reads are, whether it's a do not or automatic or let's say safety, they applies the same energy, which is not a correct. Then interface with the hammer free fall, that is also believed to be, but we do not have that correction factor presently in practice. Then damage or one sample drive or shoe, we do not have any correction factors for the such kind of things. Then failure to properly seat, sometimes it depends on the rig operators and the engineers available at the site, but we do not have any correction factor for it. Then inadequate cleaning of loose materials from the bottom, that also we do not have that any correction factor which can take care of it. Failure or to the balance hydrostatic pressure inside and outside the boreholes, this is very much important, and sometimes people skip this or misinterpret this. That way probably your SPT values may get decrease or increase. Then unreliable results in gravelly and hard clay. Samples from dilute soils, this is what you call dilutancy correction factor. And then careless work by crew and operator. This is also important. In the morning probably you are very fresh, people are very energetic, but at the evenings as the days pass on, they become more and more careless and lazy. So sometimes the supervision is also a major point. There are some particular, let's say, factors affecting SPT results have been summarized by Kulave and Maine. You can refer this. Most of the times you have a either increase or decrease in the SPT values. However, these factors usually are not reported or nor, I would say, acknowledged into any of the soil investigation report, specifically in India. However, for other, let's say, they usually prepare the factual data, and those factual data then utilized by geotechnical consultant who actually take care of all these correction factors and then take a suitable decision based on the SPT blow counts. Now, if we really would like to demonstrate that how it differs, then this particular, let's say the first graph, it is for the same site close by boreholes, but the two types of a different SPT hammers have been used. One is called a safety hammers, another is called automatic hammers. So this is a safety hammer output, and this one is for automatic hammer output. You can see the variation is almost a 50%. Here the blow count is 49, where it goes to 25. Here it's a 10, whereas you report it to 30. Now, if somebody gives you this output, probably your decision making or shear strength assessment of that site would be different. And if somebody supplies you the SPT values from the automatic hammers, probably your decision making on a type of foundations and the shear strength profile would be different. So based on the type of hammers and equipment you use at geotechnical investigation program also makes a big difference, and SPT blow counts are usually not comparable unless you compare all the aspects for the site and for the let's say investigation carried out through those equipments. So we started measuring the energy corrections, what we call these as SPT energy measurement corrections, and you can see that this is the let's say donut type of hammer which is based on this anvil, and below that there are some energy measurement rods which will be instrumented, and then the free fall of this will give you some particular energy transfer ratio, what we call the ETR, so that you will be able to understand that whatever has been the applied energy and how much is the transferred energy to the below SPT roads over here. And that usually ranges from 40% to, let's say, sometimes it's 80%. But if your energy measurement is 40%, probably your SPT blow counts are higher in numbers, that you need to have to, let's say, calibrate it later stage to take care of decision making on shear strength. The another important field test is CPT data. It's very much understood that we will not be able to discuss all this over here. So that's why I just picked the one slide over here. That CPT data is also very much important, and sometimes to characterize the soft soil, CPT data are more reliable compared to the SPT data. And CPTs are more famous into offshore applications and the marine environment, because they will be able to understand the pore rotor pressure built up and the shaft frictions and the cone frictions resistance directly available throughout the entire depth of investigation. Now let us come to something on investigations to design. Let's say we have carried out plenty of soil investigations, and now we want to characterize the things for design, foundation designs. Sometimes, consultant on a limited data took a decision on a type of foundations. So the budgets and DPRs and everything has been prepared based on the cost, which are based on the very limited geotechnical investigation data. And when they actually go to the site for actual execution, the site would be something like this, and then probably the entire foundations, the concept would be changed. Nobody emphasized the consolidation settlement. Nobody emphasized the negative skin frictions. Then the pile need to be even go more deeper, or the size of need to be increased, or you need to employ the ground improvement, and everything which will be then added into the cost. And then they will find out that cost overrun is a major issue for the project. It is not the problem with the, let's say, the estimation. It is problem with the limited data which has been used for preparation of the project budgets. So anyway, the focus are for designs are most of the times have to be on safe bearing capacities and settlement recommendations. If your piles have been implemented into the project, the axial capacities, then the lateral load capacities, and the settlements are probably nobody actually calculates the settlements of the pile foundations when you implement the pile foundation. However, for international projects, the settlement estimation of piles and pile groups are mandatory. Whereas in India, probably nobody bothers to go for any of the calculations over here. Whereas sometimes I see some of the consultants took a very pragmatic approach. They go with the footing load test, and then so that they will be able to understand better the subsoil conditions and the load transfer. Then there are some pile load test programs, and then special foundations. Maybe in terms of ground improvement, you go with the ground improvement and testing for it. Maybe the zone load on stone columns, or maybe individual stone column need to be tested. So all these particulars are usually part of a design or requires this data to fulfill the designs. However, everything is hinges to the geotechnical data available, because all these things will be then evaluated based on the data available to you or data made available to you. Reliability of the factual data, as I said, nobody gives you nobody informs that their energy transfer ratio is 40% and your SPT values are, let's say, 40% higher. Then probably the designer who is sitting into the office probably do not understand what kind of rigs have been used for soil investigation. He took simply the whatever has been the data given and characterize it. And then when you go for the load testing, the design and the outcome, they are not in agreement. And then there is an issue because you emphasize something else. Maybe your pile capacity, you emphasize that it would be of 800 ton, whereas the actual pile capacity would come out result into hardly a 400 ton. And then the project will be in a trouble. So I would say the selection of design parameters and the design situations and design experience is also very much important over here based on the data. If you prepare a design simply on the data given to you, probably sometimes it will mislead you. I would say whether for all consultants, they usually prefer to have it everything conforms to IS, or maybe those who are the third-party reviewers, they always prefer IS code mein kahan likha hai, or maybe something like that, where it has been whether it is as per IS code or not. But I would say the geotechnical codes and standards represent the standards of good practice. However, they are not, let's say, hard and fast rules for geotechnical applications. Sometimes you find the answer between two lines, and experience, then the investigations, then holistic approach, and the project, I would say, the risk which you are taking with the project, that all plays a major role in deciding the right foundations and the right risk levels and right factor of safety for your projects. And if somebody says that whether Indian standard practice will sufficiently give you guidance for parameter selections, that means from shallow investigation data, then how to find out the actual soil parameters which will be then used for design, then selection of appropriate procedures, then design situations, whether all design situations have been described, whether any temporary situation I need to consider while design, have a sufficiently elaborated and understood the recommendations on loads and actions. The present framework covers all the recent advancement, maybe the code is updated or not, and present framework, whether it's a closed loop or a weak link. That means sometimes you have sufficient information, but sometimes the I would say the vague clauses will give you a weak link type things where a designer will miss the major or important aspect of design. I would say, sorry, there are other international codes which are available, which anybody can refer. Indian standards, then Euro codes, then DIN, which is a German standard. ASTO is one of the important document, and then Geo Publications, which is from, let's say, Hong Kong or Singapore. I would say if we try to compare the parameter from IS 6403, ASTO and EN, the average value beneath the foundation need to be considered, which is recommended by IS code. And if I refer the ASTO, they say that mean minus 1 sigma. That means we need to find out a statistical distribution, and then mean minus 1 sigma, that particular or would be of a lower bound value I need to use for design. And then Eurocode goes on characteristic values, which will be on a fractile of 5%. I would not go in detail because I need to, let's say, close this as early, but let me give you one example. I would just quickly, let's say we have 3 borers, 1, 2, and 3, borel 123, 124, and 206, where I have a SPT values all along the depth. The yellow one is the layer 1, then the green one is the layer 2, and then the followed by the another yellow, which is layer 3. Now all these 3 borers are below my structure. Now which borel I need to use? If I go with the IS code, probably then I need to take an average, and the average of all layer 1, which is up somewhere around 37. However, IS code also suggests that the maximum variation, 50% or more than 50% variation, those values I need to discard. So there are 2 values, which is 79, which is SPT value 79 over here, and the another value is 54, which I need to discard them. That means I will remove those things and try to find out another average, which is coming around 28. Now, if I go with the second layer, similarly the average is coming around 21. So for if my foundations are resting on layer 1, then probably the SPT average SPT blow count is 28 for layer 1 and 21 for layer 2. Now if I compare all, let's say, approach from IS code, ASTO and Euro code, then probably if I go with the IS code, the layer 1, if I go with all counts, probably it's 37. If I ignore very high values, probably it will give you 28 for layer 1. If for the same, ASTO gives 23 and Eurocode gives 19. Whereas for layer 2, Indian code suggests 21. Whereas if I go with ASTO approach, it goes 18 and Eurocode gives 14. If you see all values, the IS code gives a higher value, or allows you to select higher values compared to two international codes which are over here. One is ASTO, another is Eurocode. That means people suggest that Indian code is a conservative code, and I would say it is not that much conservative compared to international practices, where when it comes to the selection of the parameters. So going on a average value selection parameters, which may give you let's say upper bound result, or your factor of safety is not that much high enough to withstand for 30 years of service life. So you need to be very careful in let's say selections, and try to find out appropriate distributions for design developments. I will skip all this let's say slides, which probably you can go it, but the major important aspect is that Indian code does not suggest to use long-term drain parameters for cohesive materials or say clays type of materials, whereas all other international standard recommends to perform two analysis. One is undrained analysis and another is the drain analysis. And sometimes when let's say we propose the drain parameters of the clays, probably consultants are surprised, no? They say, "Arey clay mein phi kaise ho sakta hai?" and something like that. So anyway, those who are more interested refer ASTO or Eurocodes or British standards. It can gives you the drain parameters of the cohesive materials, which can be used for your foundation analysis for long-term performance. Somebody used this, let's say the graph from everything from SPT values. The major parameter is the phi values from SPT values. So one is from IS 6403, another is from ASTO. This table 10.4.6.2.41 is from ASTO, and this is the graph. Sometimes we use, I would say, the recommended bearing pressure is, we take it out from shear criteria and we take it out from the settlement criteria. So what we derive is the ultimate bearing pressure, ultimate bearing resistance from the shear failure. Then we apply, divided it with the factor of safety, then this would be the line. And when we try to calculate the settlement based on the, let's say the width of the foundation we employ, we may get this kind of curve. And whatever the, let's say intersection point, this would be of I would say optimum foundation width or optimum foundation design, where you will get the bearing pressure set from the settlement and the shear criteria, both are the same with the corresponding settlement. And you may have some different limits of settlements, 40 mm, 75 mm, or maybe some other different way. And based on that, probably your optimized foundation width would be different. And the safe zone, similarly, for safe zone for 40 mm or 75 can be identified. And such kind of analysis need to be performed by geotechnical consultant, and it would be too difficult or too much to expect that everything need to be performed by a geotechnical investigation agency. They are the master of extracting the data and exploration, and all these particular things consultant or designers supposed to do in their office, so that because they know their structures better than the soil investigation agency, and try to find out whatever is the maximum or optimized width of foundations for their projects. You may first refer FHWA manual, or I would say what is the GEC07, which is for shallow foundation, which gives much more elaborations on this approach. And you will find it, let's say there are some particular tables and illustrative examples given into this GEC07 for finding out optimum foundation width. So I would say don't go for investigations, go with the comprehensive soil investigations. Any investigation which has been carried out just for sake of investigation, that would create a problem for you, and you will definitely come into the cost overruns and other things. Let us have one particular case study, which is a container terminal in Africa. They want to construct a proposed berth into this enclosed area, and they want to develop a shoreline along this line. So client, as let's say, have some particular small informations of a 21 boreholes, and the borehole investigation was going on, and they floated a tender based on the earlier investigation carried out few years back, and they floated the tender. So everybody has been asked to fill the tender, and they freeze the design based on the old data, not from the new data. And they actually ignore, I would say, the soil investigation which has been carried out in 2009 in form of 7 boreholes and 35 dynamic cone penetration tests. They prepared the design, but they never looked to the let's say investigation program which has been initiated in 2011. So they prepare let's say design profile, and they assume the intermediate clay layer has a strength of 100 kilopascal, and based on that they prepare the design. Then there are some particular CPT blocks. They also suggest that there are some weak layer which is coming over here approximately from -14 to -17, where you have let's say similar to sensitive or fine grain type of soils available at this location. Then the new investigation data came up which suggests that the soft clay layer, which is over here starting from -14 to let's say 17, which is of a very weak compared to what has been earlier assumed. Now, if this particular clay layer is very weak compared to what has been preliminary assumed, then there are some design implications. So we carried out our own analysis based on the let's say the new data, and with the new data, if you see, if I use this cohesion value of a 30 kilopascal compared to 100 kilopascal, and then we use the M sheet and WALAP for finding out what is the maximum let's say variation in the structural forces. The interesting was to the schematic layout of the berth. They used a combi pile, in which a pipe pile which has been connected with the let's say this is the pipe pile, which is a 1600 dia, I would say 1620 dia with a 20 mm thickness of steel pile, pipe pile, which has been connected with the sheet piles. The sheet piles have been not drilled fully to the bed level, and they have been only drilled up to -19, whereas the pipe piles which has been driven are supposed to be driven up to -25. So 25-meter long pipe pile connected with almost a 19-meter long or 17-meter long sheet piles, and alternatively what we call it as a combi pile. And this pile has been then connected with the anchor pile at the back of it. So this would be the front pile, and these piles will be then further hinged or say attached with the anchor pile at the base. Customer has prepared a proposal that the crane moves on these 2 pile rows. So the back pile also need to take a significant vertical load compared to the front one. So this would be a front pile, this would be a back pile. And all these things have been connected with the anchors. So number of anchors, you can see the anchors have been placed to this. So this would be an anchor at the top over here connected with the let's say the back pile. So crane moves on one legs on this pile and another over here. That was the original proposal. When we let's say carried out the analysis, we find out a major difference in the variation in the structural forces compared to, because of the geotechnical data which they use it for design and what actually is coming out from the revised soil investigation data. Now if you see over here, the bending moment is coming out to be 5,000 kilonewton into meter, whereas they have assumed almost approximately 4,180, and based on this they came out with this let's say diameter of pipe pile which is of 1600 dia with a 20 mm thickness. And as you can see, the maximum anchor force are also variable, so they cannot resist this bending moment with the given sections. So we again presented our design to them, asked them for clarifications and confirmations whether their sections will be taking such kind of forces or not. So based on our design analysis, they change the sections. I'll skip these things. I would like to have a more emphasis on design information, but I'll skip right now. I have to finish another case studies in a very small time. So then another thing was the global stability. As per customer, their global stability was minimum 1.4, whereas when we let's say run the global stability, it comes out to be just a 1 or 1.33 with some adjustments for deeper pipe penetration. So we again asked them for a stability verifications. So in turn, they completely changed the design, and then they changed the section sizes from 1600 to 1800 dia pile, and entire thing has been changed. Now assume if somebody does not do such kind of analysis and simply went it into a construction directly based on the given design, then that would be a disaster, because later on changing all these piles and sections is not possible. And once installed, either you need to strengthen them for throughout the life, or you just keep on spending much and much more money into maintaining them. So I would say the soil investigation data, right decisions, and right design informations are more important prior to actual construction of let's say any projects. The another is deep excavations. The client want to develop a plate mill over here, but all these plate mills has to be, let's say, connected with one scale pit, which is a very deep structure over here, and all the scales or the water which will be then come to this scale pit, and then they recycle it. Now in the hurry of erections and construction, they actually forgot to construct this deeper structure, and they erected this chimney and entire shed. Later on, when they realized that they has to install a very deep structure close to the existing facility, they come out with let's say the approach, what we call it as a well foundation approach, in which a square rectangular RCC well prepared onto the ground, they try to sink them, and then assume that after putting the let's say reaching to the suitable level, they will cast a concrete underwater, and those plug of concrete will be sufficient to take care of these things. Now if I let's say describe the situation, they sunk the, let's say, the RCC structure. They went up to the let's say minus 25 meter, and then they assume that underwater they pour a concrete, almost I would say more than 250 300 cubic meter concrete, and then they try to start dewatering it, assuming that this concrete plug will be sufficient to take care of the uplift pressure which is coming from the bottom. Now what happened, they keep on dewatering this pit, and one fine morning the entire concrete which they poured underwater, it was blown up, and the water has been gushed out from the bottom, and then there are some particular settlements experienced to this chimney and the water tank which has been erected close to it. So everything has been stopped, the erection and then the commissioning of the plate mill was stopped, and nobody was, let's say, ready to take a guarantee or let's say how to seal this entire scale pit for such kind of a huge water pressure, because without this robust arrangement, this water pressure cannot be resisted. And as you see, they try to dewater it from inside. Probably it would let's say resulted into flow of particles or sand particles from the bottom of the heap, and that has led to some cavities around it, and the pile foundation which are close to it, they let's say started tilting and sinking. You see there are some particular structures which is resting onto it. As the dewater start from this inside the pit, this piles have been started tilting because of loss of ground below it. So as a solution to it, this was given to us as a challenge, and what we did was we installed almost let's say 9 deep wells around the scale pits and started dewatering from the outside rather than inside of the pit, and try to see whether we will be able to lower up the water table or not. As you see, as we can see the bottom, we able to lower up the things. We let's say put some of the machineries inside the pit, and then started sealing some of the pits, and then put some of the manpower inside it, but at those times probably very few people ready to come into the let's say the pit, because they have been very worried about what will be happening if dewatering stops. So at that time continuous dewatering for almost, let's say, 30-35 days has been happened, and the biggest challenge was to put a RCC let's say base raft into it, because we do not have that much time to put RCC inside it. So the best was we put let's say some of the reinforcement cages prepared on the top, prepared into the let's say trusses, and then it would be transferred directly into the bottom of the raft. And then this raft was cast. The thickness was raft was almost 3 meters. And as you see, some of the shear bars have been already drilled into some of the location of the walls, so that it can be then integrated into the raft reinforcement. You can see all these particular shear bars which has been originally proposed. They were not there. They have been drilled into it and put it into grouted into this, and so that the raft can be integrated with it. And this raft was prepared in a record time, and till that, I would say the structure was commissioned in approximately 2007, and from that point to today, there are no particular uplift type of a problem has been experienced in any of the let's say compartment of the scale pit. The summary, I would say, simply summarize the things which I have presented over here. Geotechnical investigation data are very key to success of any project. One has to invest in soil investigation. The more you invest into it, the more the data will be available to designer, and you will be in a better, let's say, condition or better way to offer the better design situations to your clients. I think for your attentions, I would say I would thank Mr. Professor Bhishma for providing me this opportunity to interact with all of you. I may not be able to, let's say, take your questions right now, but probably you can write to me on my mail ID, or you can call me at let's say my mobile number, put some WhatsApp. I will be definitely happy to answer your queries and questions. From my side, that's it.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the wonderful session and the practical knowledge which you have given from your side.